Chapter 6. The Town, Bars, and Parties. John Casor's first night on the Johnson farm was a party to behold. All hands on deck and all races on hand. Virginia had 30,000 people at this time, and Anthony Johnson was a player. From the Johnson Ranch, it was a day's ride to town to get major supplies. Like in Ndongo, John would plant special places along the way and recreate communication platforms to his papa and beyond. He also knew that Amy would require more than just being a man to win. He planted to win her. Locals noticed John's skills, and he shared how to plant everything with others. In town, he was treated with respect and was able to walk freely to and from the Johnson farm without fear or favor. Everyone also knew that Johnson owned John's indentured servants contract. They also knew Tony brought John for Amy too. All families looked to grow by all means. The American dream of freedom was a living dream. And in 1648, it was actually freedom for everyone. No one was a legal slave. Everyone was working in a capacity to build our society. The corn was used for more than food. Soon, the towns popped up all over the 13 colonies, and booze was poured at will and for commerce. The parties and sex were epic. Kids born again, and towns built faster that poured more wine. Repeat. This may be before Bach, but the music was loud, and John Casor went back to his roots and picked up song too. Virginia was hopping, and people partied hard and worked even harder. Hearing music again brought Ndongo to Virginia for John. Shakespeare was on reruns for John Casor. The towns and their sizes grew quick. The makeup of the population was diverse, but classes did start to emerge during John Casor's first 7 years in America. Tobacco was commerce, and wine was used like it is today, a lubricant of commerce. Look, the English knew how to make a pub, and they know how to party. The rabble-rousers set up shop in Virginia and were free to party. America is one big bar. Yay, corn! Chapter 7. John Casor is born, 1848. The Christian faith allowed souls to be reborn again and again. In the mind of the conqueror, that what is being taught must be accepted. John Casor was blessed first as he lost his first name and gained a legal family name. Casor was chosen at random, as the clerk was told to make a name per each letter of the alphabet and then start over. If the clerk thought they looked the same, he would sometimes use the same family name. John Casor was born that August 15th, 1648, on the docks of Jamestown, Virginia. He knew it to be true. He was born again into America. Tony took possession of John the moment he walked the plank, from the sister to the white lion. He smiled, and John sighed in relief at this powerful black man taking his hand, holding his hand as he walks unshackled into America. Tony made sure of it. Tony made sure his cargo walked gracefully and proudly into America. He made sure they were each greeted with a smile. Not quite the lays of Hawaii, but the smiles of Jamaica we all know. Chapter 8. Casor works towards his 7 and love. The walk with Tony was vibrant and full of life, stories and laughter. Nowhere on the trail was danger felt, seen, or even talked about. 1648 was all in for every American of every race. Yes, abused indentured servants were out in the open, and the waking of propaganda against colored people was seen. Remember, the British drank and wrote bad, salacious newspapers. This was true in the 13 colonies too. The first printing press landed in America in 1838. Stevens wrote, John of London sailed from Hull, England to Boston, Massachusetts in summer of 1638 with Master George Lamberton. The passage was known for its passenger, Ezekiel Rogers, who settled in Rowley, as well as carrying the first printing press to the colonies. But for our John Casor, Tony showed the bright American dream every day of his life. On Tony's watch, the Johnson farm grew and the servants were family. A contract for labor that could not be broken. Given stories of how bad bosses abused that contract and set bad seeds in motion, Amy, Tony's daughter, made sure to tell John about the other realities of America. Her daddy was focused on production. As such, he was keen on a happy and growing in skills workforce. John Casor exceeded Tony's expectations. John's green thumb could grow anything. John's methodical planning set Johnson's farm on for steady growth. The partnership with Tony and John began before John set foot on American soil. Tony's big hand grabbed John on that ship's plank. John thanks Ndongo every day for Tony. It was more than impressing him to win Amy, but boy, that was a huge part of it. Amy and John were basically inseparable. Once she taught him to read, they read together and read everything. Then, Amy gave John his first pen and a notebook. The bound book had a drawing of a peafowl that took John back to being first in Ndongo. John's first written words were, "My name is John Casor, and I will be free." From there, the book, pen, and Amy refreshed each other every day. The diaries are lost, but the emotions of each can be seen in John's court testimony. John was articulate, well-dressed, and ready to be free. With that, he and Amy would marry and cooperate with the Johnson farm. Being free was the magic topic living in America, not yet written, but the pursuit of happiness was everything. John and Amy worked hard. At no time did Tony have to question their daily activities. Everything was for the future of everyone, not just them. John and Amy's planted love locations were famous among the locals. Both made it known for all to feel free to take flowers home. "Don't worry," they would say. "We will plant more." The town also noticed how quickly Tony gave John power to expand his role and run business activities. John worked hard, and Amy taught him to be gracious, something that was really easy for John to learn. Mr. John Casor was a true American gentleman. Every moment finding about this man is a worthy moment. The fight for freedom was in his actions of working hard and learning to petition for himself. Tony knew Amy was in good hands and was proud. John frequently told Tony he would marry her when free. Tony never said no. He always reached out his big hand and confirmed his love. John was a natural. Chapter 9. Johnson interacted with white society. Anthony Johnson was 19 years old when he landed in Jamestown, Virginia, in August 1619. He was quick to gain his freedom from being an indentured servant. Hard work and opportunity made it quick for him. Quick being less than the 7 years. Others of his time were said to have to serve longer to move from indentured servant to free American. The colony of Virginia granted Anthony Johnson land. The first years, Johnson worked directly for the Virginia Company. What he learned there openly was applied, and success followed. Johnson lived a free man until he died at 70 years old in 1670. 70. Wow. That is so old. In the 1660s, Tony moved to Maryland and became a very successful tobacco farmer. He hired or bought out more indentured servant contracts, including his own sons in 1645. Tony and Amy got good at negotiating the court and contract systems. This powerful knowledge attracted more society engagement. The court players noticed. Tony's success came from lifting every stakeholder on his farm. Not just his children, but the whole. Look, I found food, so I howl. Did you find food? Team. Pride of ownership came through as all Johnson farmhands moved freely in execution of their duties. No pit bosses were needed to keep any in line. The American dream was that powerful. Tony was considered the black patriarch of what the white society considered Negro property owners. The reality was quite different. Tony and his compatriots knew how to protect black colonists from bad owners. The secret was to focus on commerce and buy more black indentured servants. Yes, some rough black owners existed, but all records purport to show Anthony Johnson as a true founder of America, a teacher, and a great businessman. Everyone on the farm and black community knew the role. When interacting with the white man, make Tony king. It is only with supreme deference to one that all were left alone. And King Tony he was. He commanded attention at every gala event in Virginia and Maryland. He was friends and customers of the town's merchants and had a stool at many a bar. Tony was particularly fond of and continued to learn from tobacco and commodity traders. There was insatiable demand Tony was particularly fond of and continued to learn from the tobacco and commodity traders. There was insatiable demand from England and other markets that made every seed nurtured a profitable seed. White society knew how to party, and Tony, Amy, and John, and Tony's wife Mary were dressed to the hills in the early 50s. It was a special time of freedom and camaraderie among whites and all races in colonial Virginia. The key thing or takeaway from this time was mixed races, white and all, others were one community. The indentured servant system was just short of slavery, but it did have an out back then. The white society is also a litigious one. The reason we have any records at all is because farmers kept suing each other. Basically, Johnson had his mark and he used it to negotiate and execute contracts. Chapter 10. Meet Colonel Parker. Robert Parker, as we heareth him say, two faces appear when white man interacts with anyone. In Japanese, it is said to be face and heart. Our Colonel Robert Parker was an elegant piece of work. George and Robert Parker role in John Casor being named by the court to be owned by Anthony Johnson for life is manipulative. These two may indeed have carried with them the instructions from Holland on how to carry out the race card in courts to legalize blacks as slaves and whites as not. The Dutch business plan in the trade of flesh was not a single entrepreneur. It was a country passion. We go back to the death of George and Robert Parker's grandfather, Pastor Robert Parker, in 1614, in his exile of Holland. Papa Parker, as the family stories told, held the hand of God and was wholly misunderstood. He was ordered captured by King James for equation of idolatry to use of the cross in religious ceremonies. Papa Parker was a heretic. Okay, stay with me here. Papa Parker ended his storied career as a Protestant in Amsterdam until the ghost of King James, still alive at that time, stopped his ascendancy. Papa Parker wrote of Jesus descending into hell between the resurrection and the revelation. To understand the foundation of hate in America, you combine Papa Parker, Dutch slave trade juggernaut, tobacco, and the following quote: "The Protestant work ethic that influenced the founding of this country included a belief that the more material wealth you have, the closer you are to God," said Robin DiAngelo, a professor whose research focuses on how white people are socialized to collude with institutional racism. George and Robert Parker were neighbors to Anthony Johnson. George was close in age to Amy Johnson, and he was always smitten with her. Virginia was a small town growing massive amounts of profitable tobacco. Everyone was all in, and from when Rolfe landed in 1609 and Pocahontas gave and he received the magic seed, the seed that sprouted tobacco, me, and America. Colonel Robert Parker is a title carried with him from England. You know the character. An old army dude holding on to his old career. This is our American Parker. George was all right, but was always protected by Colonel Parker. The local churches were still mixed race until the 1650s. The towns all played, traded, and worked together for America. But Colonel Parker was bred to do one thing. When the signs show themselves, Parker has the roadmap to start seeding racist hate to elevate the slave trade. Parker supported the indentured servant system as it was in place. But the true goal was of acceptance of money first, white people second, and other races last in growing America. Two sides to Colonel Parker were clear to him, but not others. To Johnson, Parker was a friend and an active trading partner. Farming is seasonal. Lots and lots of hard work and stretches of free time for the owners. The winters in Virginia can be harsh, especially where Parker and Johnson farms are located. The families and farm stakeholders were all close and on a first-name basis. Except around certain white folk. Then again, Tony was made king and treated as such. Everyone in the colony was more literate per capita than America today. All of them. These are not stolen hearts of America. These minds made America.